Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh man, do we have a great show. And I got to tell you something. There's nothing that excites me more than one of my previous guests writes a brand new book, and they come out with something, and then I go, hey, would you like to be on the show again? And they go, yeah, I'd like to be on the show again. And I'm like, going, that's so awesome. Because I got to tell you something. Will Shermer, I think we called him William Schirmer on the previous show. I think is what we may have done. But you know what? Will Shermer, who wrote The Leadership Core. You might remember the show, The Leadership Core, which is a fabulous book, by the way. Absolutely fantastic. Well, guess what? He wrote a new book, and it's kind of a little bit of I think it's a little bit of a departure for him because it's not, it's a little bit outside of what he's done normally. And this is called Fulfilled, Finding Joy and Prosperity in Life. Now, let me ask you a question, because it's really an important question. And that is, wherever you're listening to or watching, right? Because, we're on Apple TV and Samsung TVs, LG TVs, Android TVs, right? And Roku's and Amazon Fire Sticks now. We're in 60 countries around the world on their cable stations, which is huge, and I'm grateful for that. So you may be watching us there. You may be watching us live. You may be in your car driving, listening to us as a podcast or something. And here's the question. Are you living a life fulfilled? First of all, when was the last time you asked that question? Are you living a fulfilled life? I mean, do you go to work in dread, or do you go to work fulfilled? Do you live a life that you go, man, I am so excited to be here? Do you live it in the present every day going, man, what a great day today is? If you're not, then I'm going to tell you something. Today's show's for you. It really is. The book is fantastic. It just really is. It's a book that I know that we call this a business show, but you know what? There are no business problems. There are only personal problems that infiltrate our business. Every problem that you have in your business really starts as a personal problem. It really does. If you're not fulfilled in your work, I can tell you you're not fulfilled in your life. Right? And if you're not fulfilled in your life, I can tell you you're not fulfilled in work. Every problem that business has, it starts with a personal problem. And what Will Shermer has done here in Fulfilled is he has written a book that is going to help you be fulfilled, to live the life that you were meant to live, that we're all meant to live, a life with meaning and purpose, a life that's not hopeless but has hope, a life that builds our character, that builds our attitudes, that builds our resilience. Who says that? I say that, right? Right? There's three things you're in control of: your attitude, right? Your effort, and your resilience. Golly, it sounds really familiar to what Will says here in this book. We're going to talk to him just a minute. Before we do that, though, we do what we do every week, right? And that's we walk through the 4 areas of your life. And here's the deal. Look, if we're not working on our physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual selves, do you know what? We're doing ourselves a huge disservice, because we have to be working on ourselves in those 4 areas every day. Right now, it doesn't have to be by leaps and bounds. It just means that we got to work on it little by little each day. And this means that what we do is we just make little steps to improve ourselves. A guy that I respect greatly, who is a Delta Force operator, gave a great analogy. He says this: if your clone of yourself from yesterday showed up right now, could you kick its tail? It's a great question, right? Because you're not comparing yourself to anybody else. You're comparing yourself to yesterday. If yesterday's person showed up, would you be able to beat it physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually? That's why we have to be working ourselves all the time. Right? So here's how we do this on the show. We rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being my training in this area is not going well, 10 being my training can't get any better, right? So physically, evaluate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 of how you're exercising, eating right, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, and getting your regular checkups. Right now, whatever the number is, 5's average, whatever the number is, doesn't matter. But what we want to do is just get to the next number, right? Even if it's like you're a 2 and we just want to get you to 2.5, right? Because we can all do something. The point is we can all do something to make ourselves just a little better. right? We can put down the fork, right? We put down the bag of chips, right? Drink, instead of drinking the soda, drink the water, right? We can all do something, right? Get off the couch, listen to the show while you're walking, right? Okay, so that's your first number. Second number is the intellectual number, right? And here's the thing intellectually. It's about learning. What are you doing to be an active participant in your learning? Gosh, Will talks about this. You and I are the only ones responsible for our learning. No one else is responsible. And it's the one thing that we can do over the course of a lifetime. Do you know that? I mean, our bodies, well, I hate to say it, as we age, they don't hold up as well as they used to. As much as I try to exercise, I noticed today they hurt just a little bit more than they did. But I can still work, right? But intellectually, I can grow because I can learn. What are you learning that's new? What are you doing to help yourself be better at your job? What are you doing to help yourself be better in your relationship? What are you learning, right? And are you exercising both halves of your brain, the creative side and the logical side? You want to know what you can do? You can read a book, take up an instrument, learn a foreign language, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing? Third area is the emotional area, right? 2 simple steps. One is, how well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure? By the way, you can. It's your choice. Will talks about that in his book, by the way. Secondly, how well are you able to tap into and understand the emotions of others? Will talks about that too in his book, right? It's called listening, right? With intent. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself there? And then finally, the fourth area, spiritual area. And you know what? Here it is. Spiritual area is this. What do you have faith in? When things go bad, what do you believe in? What is it that you believe in? And not only when it goes bad, what do you believe in? But in the midst of your chaos, what can give you peace? Right? For some people, it's believing in God. For some people, they say it's nature. For some people, it's meditation. Whatever it may be, the question is it giving you peace in the midst of chaos? Is it working for you? And if it's not, what do you got to do to change it? Right? Because the spiritual realms are real. If you move the physical, the mental, and the emotional, what we're left with is the spiritual. We all have faith. We all walk by faith every day. When you woke up in faith. Right? You didn't know that today was going to happen. Matter of fact, when you go to your car, you don't even think about it, but you turn the key believing that the car is going to turn on. It's faith. Right? You step off the curb, right? Believing the traffic's going to stop as you walk across where the sign says walk. You believe the traffic's going to stop. That's faith. You drank a sip of coffee and you believed it wasn't poisonous. It's faith. The chair you're sitting in right now, you believe is going to hold you up. That's faith. So we walk by faith all the time. So we walk in a spiritual realm. So how is your spiritual side working for you, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, right? Now, those 4 areas, whatever those 4 numbers, that's like the air and tires of your car, right? If the air is too low, what happens? The car veers, doesn't run efficiently. If one of the areas is too low, the car's going to veer to the right or to the left, or it's not going to roll right. Right? If it's completely flat, it doesn't work. What we're trying to do is get to that level 10 where the air is perfect in our tires, right? So that the engine runs smoothly and that we run smoothly. And speaking to somebody who's got his air and his tires all to great level, his name is Will Shermer. He is the author of both The Leadership Core and Fulfilled, Finding Joy and Prosperity in Life. He is a senior management professional in human resources, having been involved with HR, talent management, and learning and development functions for domestic and international firms over more than 23 years. His expertise includes the creation and deployment of leadership development programs for a number of organizations. He grew up in Minnesota. He's a fond lover of the outdoors. He loves to travel, motorcycle, and exercise. He's proud father of 3 grown children, Daniel, Richard, and Alyssa. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show, and welcome back for a second time, Will Schirmer. Welcome back, Will.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You were very gracious earlier. It's closer to the truth to say I begged you to come back because I had such a great time last time when we were talking. You were very gracious to give a first-time author a chance to talk about something that he's very passionate about, and of course, you hit it right on the head in saying that really it's not about business and life. It's one and the same, and I think that's one thing I learned as I was constructing the Leadership Core and found that my writing took me in a different direction. So loved and had such a great time when I was here last time. I think it's such a great show.
Thank you.
And all that soliciting and begging you to come back paid off. So I appreciate that.
Well, I enjoyed. Listen, I enjoyed Leadership Core. I really enjoyed Fulfilled. It's absolutely outstanding. So let's get started here, because the book is divided up into sections, and then within the sections you break down how we become more fulfilled, or how we can become more fulfilled, and we have to take responsibility for it. So in section 1, by the way, character is the cornerstone of personal fulfillment. And it sounds so obvious that character is the cornerstone of personal fulfillment, but I feel we got to start there, because I feel like we can't build on any of the other blocks until we do section 1. And I think that's your intention here, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. As I was constructing the Leadership Core, I started in a similar area, right? Because whether you're leading people or leading your own life,
right,
you have to have a life of character. Now, whatever character means to you, and it varies, I get it. But when people lead not with their own sense of values and principles, but according to other people's, you lose yourself, you lose your sense of identity. So, it's important early on to really understand that it evolves throughout your life, right? What you believe in, what your principles are, that happens over long periods of time. But you've got to stand for something, and you've got to know what you stand for, because those things are the compass points that guide you. It helps you make good decisions, or decisions that make you feel good about your life, when you make them in harmony with your principles, values, your core beliefs. And so, yeah, you've got to start there. And I espouse some pretty similar character traits to leadership in general. They're basic things like integrity, like having a sense of accountability and responsibility, humility, compassion, of course. I think they're kind of universal characteristics, but it's not important what mine are. It's important what yours are. And in living in harmony with whatever you identify, again, as your most important character traits. That's the thing, right? And if people are attracted to you on that basis, that's great. And if people aren't, that's okay too, because you're going to attract people in your life that are consistent with what you believe. And therefore, of course, you're going to be able to build better relationships, and you're probably going to be able to be more effective in your life, right? Because you're going to surround yourself with people fundamentally who believe in the same basic things that you do. And I think that's important. Again, it's important to have diversity and to be able to respect others' beliefs. Absolutely. But you've got to use character as a compass point in your life.
Okay, so I want to hit on. I kind of want to hit these because, and we don't have to spend a lot of time there, because I know there's a lot to cover. But I still want to hit them, because out of the blocks, what you say is integrity must be discussed before the rest of the character traits, because it's the beating heart of character. That's literally what you said, and I was like going, Will, here's the thing. We talk about integrity a lot. Matter of fact, I feel like we talk about it so much, we take it for granted. And I feel like everybody's got their own definition. Integrity is what you do when no one's looking, blah, 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 blah. Right. And we kind of, but you start with this as a cornerstone to our character. Develop it a little further and reawaken us, please, to the importance of integrity.
Yeah, and you're right, right? There's stomach churning cliches out there around integrity that, and frankly, they're so overused, they lose their value.
Right.
But the question about integrity is about, however you define it. It's about, okay, when decisions are tough, when it comes to things that involve personal sacrifice, are right, but will cause you pain, right? Integrity is not, it's not a matter of degrees, right? No one's ever described as, they're fairly honest. They're pretty much a good, nobody, you've got it or you don't, right?
Right.
And the harsh reality is, if you can't be trusted about something, you probably can't be trusted about anything. Because those are integrity cracks are really glimpses into your character. Now, I'm not saying no one's made a mistake about integrity in past, right? It's happened. We've all fallen down. No one's going to tell me that they've never lied before. We've all done it. But the harsh reality of adulthood is that, it's not like when you were 10, mom doesn't get to forgive you, or your boss doesn't, or your friends, like when your mom did when you were 10. That's not how the world works. So, the importance of saying, okay, when times are tough, integrity it's not situational, right? When situations are tough, or require greater personal sacrifice, or doing things that may be against your own best interest, but are right. Do you make that decision, or do you take the path of least resistance? And I'm going to use, right, there are plenty of characters out there, right? Whether it's in corporate business or in sports, right? Whether it's, we've got plenty of examples, right, of famous sports figures, let's say in the Tour de France world, that crushed their own reputation.
Yes.
By not only acting against a sense of integrity, but they attempted to destroy other people's character and careers along the way to hide their lie.
Right.
You have Enron, you have Ponzi schemes, you have Bernie Madoff. You could go on and on and
Sure.
on, right? I'm not trying to call out individuals, but I'm saying, unfortunately, the adage of, if you want to figure out how much time it takes to build your reputation and get to the top, use a calendar. If you want to see how long it takes to fall to the bottom, try a stopwatch. Now, that's not my quote. It's John W. Maxwell's quote, right? And he's much more, he's a little more famous than I am in the leadership development realm. But that's why I love him, right? It's because at the end of the day, and this is about leading your life, it's about integrity, because a lack of integrity means a lack of trust. If people don't trust you, they won't build relationships. You won't have influence. There's a reason it's espoused in your life as well as business, because people have to be able to trust you and not worry about your ulterior motives. They want to know that you are real, and that you will do things that are in others' best interests as well, right? That if you're always looking out for your own self-interest, those aren't the friends that we have for very long. They're fair weather friends. They come and go. And if you're wise, they go pretty quickly in your life.
His name is Will Shermer. The book is entitled Fulfilled, Finding Joy and Prosperity in Life. It's really a great book. We're just getting started here, but you're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, the Epic Physical Therapy, my physical therapist, I think this should be your physical therapist too. Look, they work with people like me. They work with professional athletes. They customize a treatment program that just is specific for you. It's not physical therapy in a box. So when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, you know what? Just go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. Linda Craft and Team Realtors. Now, they've been around for 35 years. Listen, they don't sell houses. What they sell is life transition, right? Because every time you purchase a home, whether it's your first home or your last home, it's a life transition. And she understands it. And so for over 35 years, she's been helping thousands of people transition their lives. She would love to help you with your transition in your life. Look, you can learn more about her team by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And got to give a shout out to Hint Water, because Hint Water is the beverage of DBTV. That's right. If you're watching us on DBTV, on all those areas like Apple TV or cable stations, or wherever you may be watching us, listen, Hint is the official beverage of DBTV. And you know what? It's delicious, and I think you'll enjoy it. No sugar and no calories. It's absolutely fabulous. I think you'll love it. Get yourself some Hint. That's just a hint. And we're back here on A New Direction with Will Shermer, his book, Fulfilled, finding joy and prosperity in life. All right, Will. We got integrity, but there are some pieces that are just not intuitive, and one of them is humility. As our foundational, as part of that foundation of character. I don't think a lot of people will typically would put humility as a foundational character trait, but I believe that it is critical, especially the way you explained it. Let's talk about the importance of humility as part of our foundation.
Yeah, had you asked me, 25 years ago, I wouldn't have said it, right? It was all about, and I think people learn on, hey, it's all about confidence, right? Confidence is key.
Right.
Whether you're watching the Willy Wonka movie or acting in real life, right? Confidence is key. And, it's fake it till you make it. But the problem with that is, we see it all the time, right? We live in a socially constructed world, right? If I don't like my identity, I'll just create a new life online. I'll become much more important online. Now, whether that's real or not is another thing. But I think the world encourages such self-promotion that we can lose our sense of self-identity. And it's ego is okay, right? Having a basic sense of self-worth is it's important to self-preservation. I get it. But there's a much greater problem with having a sense of ego that outstrips your actual ability and your skills and experience, and that's where we get into problems. And there's great books on this, right? Far better than I could write. Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, I think, is a masterclass in talking about the basics of humility. If you are not humble, you don't learn from others. Right. Because you know it all, right? You don't value people, and if you don't value people, for one, it's a repulsive quality. People can sense that you belittle them and don't value them, so they just don't hang around all that long.
Right.
And the other is that you're not in a position to learn, and you are not in a position to accept feedback. And accepting feedback is one of the hardest things that we can do initially until we get used to it. It's like sales calls. The first time you do it in a new job, it's petrifying. The 1,000th time, no problem, right? And when we learn to accept feedback and understand that accepting feedback is the person who is not humble will not accept feedback. They'll dismiss any negative feedback, but they'll gladly accept compliments. And I think this sort of thing blinds us to the very information we need to get better at whatever it is we want to do in life. And it doesn't matter what that thing is, whether it's being the absolute best, radio and net stream host to, writing a decent book. If you can't accept feedback because you're not humble, it's crippling. So that's only one part of it. I think the other is that we all know that arrogance, it might get you to the top, but you never stay at the top of any pursuit, any profession, because eventually, and I probably talked about this before, pride cometh before the fall. And that's exactly right, is a lack of having enough humility to say, I don't need it all. Hey, I've made a mistake. I need help. Let's be honest, whether it's addiction in your life or some other emotional struggle or a challenge at work, people's failure to ask for help because they're afraid of what others might think is, it's a derivative of ego. And I think that sense of humility is really, really important. And, I'd like to think I'm more humble than I was.
Right.
I think earlier in my career or life, for me, it was, of course you're coming to me for all the answers. I'm the leader in the area. That's what I get paid for. Ask me, I got a million great ideas. Of course.
Right.
But that's not how you lead, and it's not how you build relationships, and it's also can be exhausting when you really know that putting on that sort of facade isn't really who you are or who you should be. So humility is super important. And I learned so much about humility doing research for the leadership book, but I think I learned more about it doing research for the second book. And also, when you go through just changes in your own life, right? You realize, if you don't humble yourself, the world does it for you.
Yeah.
And there are checks and balances like that happen. I think there's some sort of humility karma out there that kicks in at some point. So,
all right, I would have quoted Will Shermer, humility karma. I love.
Yeah, there's some. I think there's something that pulls the rug out from under you when you're getting too full of yourself. It's like, no, you don't know it all.
Yeah.
And it's, for instance, at work, it's the thing you didn't ask about.
Right.
You thought you had it all figured out, or whatever it is. There is something there. It is sort of karmatic that says, yeah, you've got to have a check and balance on your own ego, or unfortunately, when life does it for you, it's much more painful.
There's a quote that you have in this section where it says, "There's no room for debate and diverse opinions in the arrogant person's orbit. They simply won't stand for it." And, I know people like this, right? And I may have even been a person like this, but they will even tell you that if it's about a color preference, that their color is the only color that's right. Right? I mean, they're the ones that go, oh, somebody will say, oh, yellow is beautiful. And they go, no, yellow's disgusting. Are you kidding? How could you like yellow? Green is the only color. Right? I mean, that's how far an egotist will go. And there's no challenging them because they're always right. Right? And you're right. They cannot, I know we're going to talk about this probably later, and I'll probably bring it up again, but they're completely uncoachable. They cannot be coached because they know everything. They know more. And that's, we got to check ourselves at the door here. Right? I mean, I'm sure Will, like you, with every book that I wrote, just like you, when you wrote the second book, did you get the humbling experience that you went, oh my gosh, I really don't know much of anything?
Yeah, you do research, right? I did research for this book, and I put together a primer, just like the last one was a primer on leadership.
Right.
But if I'm to get into humility, well, there are experts in the area of ego and humility that know far more than I know about the subject of being humble. That in itself is humbling, ironically.
Ironically, yes.
You dig into stuff, and I think you're right. I mean, the worst is when you have a manager or an executive that has to get the last word in and is right about everything. And I've worked with people like that. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
And, I'd like to say I've never done that in my career. I probably have at some point, right?
Right.
Gone too far in proving I was right. But whether you're a spouse at home or you're at work, the problem with that is that eventually people say, just as I said to one colleague, I said, there's no use. I can't argue with someone who is always right.
Right.
So I've got to vote. I have to vote with my feet regarding this conversation and tell you, it's easier for me to walk away because we're getting nowhere, and I can't help you if you will not take advice.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you and I both know people where you just don't give advice because you just know that they're not going to receive it. And so you just can't do it because you're wasting, anything that you're about to suggest is nothing but wasting your energy.
It's like a bad movie, right? The 2 hours of your life you'll never get back. It's the same thing. Every one of those conversations. It's like, yeah, that's 7 minutes I could have spent sleeping or doing, lifting weights, doing whatever I want to do. And I think you gotta, over time, right? I think it's wisdom that tells you, I've gotta walk away from this one.
Yes.
Because it's not worth my time. And there are relationships that are not worth preserving.
Wow. Right. I read that in your book too, by the way. And that's such a critical truth that we have to face. There are some relationships that just aren't worth preserving. Yeah. Beautiful. I want to move. I know accountability is one, and we talk a lot about accountability, but the one final core piece I really want to talk about here is compassion and forgiveness. And here's why. again, accountability and integrity, we go, okay, we all know that, sure, I could get that's a character. But compassion and forgiveness is not what we would normally think as a foundational stone that we can stand on. But the way you describe it and the way that you handle it, all of a sudden we go, wow, it better be a foundational stone for you to stand on. So let's talk about compassion and forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, it's a core of relationship building, right?
Right.
I mean, it takes much more strength to forgive than it does to to just walk away or hold a grudge. And we all know, we've made mistakes in our own lives. So, I think someone said, I'm sure, that forgiveness is a gift that you give to yourself, right? Not just the other person.
Right.
And I think it's like that sack of animosity that at some point the burden, you've got to put the burden down. Or it eats away and destroys you. And I've been through periods of my life where I'm bitter about something, and you hold on to it until you realize that I'm not actually living for today,
Right.
because I'm too busy holding the grudge, or am incredibly bitter about what happened yesterday or what may happen tomorrow, that I think, now I'm playing scenarios in my head.
Right.
I know Bob's going to argue with me. I don't
Right.
like him. So there is a piece around forgiveness, I think, that it takes humility to forgive,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I think it's the piece that until it's done, relationships can't move on, right? It's taught all the time, as a matter of fact, in the workplace regarding complaint handling. Now, apologizing to the customer, not because you were wrong, but apologizing that they are upset.
Right.
If you're a customer, until you hear that, you can't move past it.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing in life. So whether you're giving it or receiving it, it's important. Compassion is obviously, it's a basic human quality to have care and concern for other people, to show interest in their lives, and to try and pick other people up when when they need just a little bit of kindness. You do not know, and it's often said that the one little thing that you do can make a big impact on someone else's life. And I forget, a great writer said, "Look, I'll help anyone if it takes 5 minutes or less. My rule is I'll help anyone."
Right.
And I like the concept. And I mean, it's not a big deal. We do it all the day, all the time, right? And I happen to have done it in an airport one time recently, when someone was struggling a little bit. And yeah, in the end, I think it probably made their life a lot easier that day. It probably wasn't life changing, but it's the little things you do. You never know how close people are to breaking, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, we
So
don't. I mean, we get. I don't think we understand the power that we hold within ourselves to just a few words of encouragement out of compassion can alter a destination or alter a journey. It's like, for some people, it's like the cairns that are stacked stones on your trail walking, that you're hoping you're still on the trail, and then you see that stack of stones, and you go, oh yeah, okay, I'm still there. That's what I believe when we're compassionate and encourage each other, that's what I believe that we do.
I think that's a good analogy. Yeah, I think um, we have to remember that a few venomous words from us can destroy people.
Right. Right.
Just as a few words at the right moment in time can lift people up. Even if you think it's trivial to you, it's impactful to someone else who, they may be on the verge of some significant precipice in their lives emotionally.
Right.
And, our few words might pull them back a little bit from that. Or the call, the call we
Okay, we lost Will for a second. Don't know what happened there. Wait for Will to come back. Apologize to everybody out there. We're talking with Will Shermer And I think Will's back here. I think he's coming
I
back.
apologize to you, Jay, for that.
No worries. No worries.
I will tell you, ironically, when we were talking about the call, that was my son. So I apologize for the technical difficulty. But if anything, and I didn't plan that, I didn't ask him to call just to prove that point. You know, I don't hear from my kids often, and
Right.
you know, to me, or you know, let's say I don't often get a call. We keep in touch, but you know, so when they call, it's always like, oh, great, and you know, it may not mean much to them in their 10 minutes, but it means things to me. And I think that's the point when you talk about compassion is, you know, it's really it's just a basic human quality, and it's such a crazy world we live in right now.
Yeah.
There's so much going on, and we see such, you know, unfortunately, what's much more newsworthy is violence and depravity. And we see it all the time, and it takes us to a new low. And I would just really love more, you know, more small acts of kindness that make big impacts to be advertised. There's lots of heroes out there, right? I just love to see more of it, more lights shined on those people.
I agree with you. I want to just take us back to forgiveness because I want people to hear a quote that you have in this book. It says, "A grudge is like a festering wound that never heals. It is a sack full of animosity, resentment, and bitterness that becomes heavy over time and infects the other areas of our life." That is so true. And that, I believe, is why it's a cornerstone. My wife taught me something years ago. She said, a lack of forgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. And I've always remembered that because it's so true, because the way you describe it, and it's so heavy. And, you know, I know you're going to talk about that we have to have some self-compassion on ourselves, you know, down the road. We're going to talk about that in the book. But the truth of the matter is, I think it's such a huge thing. I know that there's a famous singer who is very popular, and she has said, you don't need to forgive, you just need to move on. And I think you and I are both of the absolute truth is you just don't move on when you're truly deeply hurt. There has to be some sort of sense of forgiveness. You can't just ignore it and hope it goes away, because I mean, I've had to forgive people. I've literally had to write people from decades ago to say, because I knew I was holding on to it, and there's just nothing healthy about it. Right?
Yeah. I was a famous grudge holder as well, right? You know, sort of like, and you know, I suppose some might say, well, cutting people out of your life is a form of that. I think there's a line, and we'll talk about, you know, we'll talk maybe a little bit about the fact that not every relationship's worth preserving if they're a toxic influence on your life.
Sure.
But also you have to forget. Yeah, you have to forgive, because the truth is you don't move on. And the only person you end up hurting really in the end is yourself. I mean, you end up spitefully wounding someone else, but it's really at a greater cost to yourself in the long run.
Yeah, it sure is. His name is Will Shermer. The book I mean, listen, we just literally just went through the first section. I know that's all we've covered, but it's so powerful because it was so critical. It's the cornerstones, the foundation for you to be fulfilled and find your life of joy and prosperity. And you're listening to him here on A New Direction. Folks, Epic Physical Therapy. I talk about them all the time, but listen, they have the cutting edge, top of the line equipment, Alter G anti-gravity treadmill, the Normatec compression sleeves, the Game Ready. They're trained, certified in the most comprehensive cutting edge treatments available, like blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, cupping. And that's just a few. They have so many. So look, when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, just go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors. Look, there is a reason why her first customer from 1985 still comes by today and sees her, right, for their home transition needs. And you know what all her customers say about her, she's a legend of customer service. Legend, right? She doesn't say it, they say it. Listen, find out why she has been for over 35 years a legend, the legend of customer service. Learn more by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back again with my friend Will Schirmer and his book, Fulfilled, Finding Joy and Prosperity in Life. All right, Will, we can move on to section 2. I was just so hard. I thought it's going to be hard to get out of section 1 because his character is such an important part of it. But this is the longest section of the entire book, and I think for good reason. And it's called Emotional Intelligence. And it is the longest of all the sections. And so help us understand. I know, because we all know Daniel Goleman is kind of like sits on top of the pyramid when it comes to emotional intelligence. But help us understand why emotional intelligence now comes next and why it's the biggest piece of being fulfilled.
Yeah, I think a couple of reasons. One is I think I learned so much about myself doing research in this area. So much, really so much, and also so much about how important it is in business, right, as well as life. And frankly, I think part of it was selfishness. So as I got into this, I was like, oh, I gotta write more about this. This is great. I'm discovering stuff about myself, and really, this book was a voyage of self-discovery. It was, although based off a concept about leadership. Before you lead others, you need to learn how to lead yourself. And what I really realized is what I was really talking about was how to lead a more fulfilling life. And frankly, we've all been through it. And during portions of my own life, I think I was not completely ignorant, but just, let's say, not nearly as aware as I could be in terms of my emotions, and my emotional intelligence certainly could have been better developed. And I got into this and really learned a lot about myself. So I began writing, and I think it's the longest area because I think overall it's described as really a meta competency. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It crosses everything else. Your emotional intelligence affects your ability to build relationships, your ability to learn, your ability to be resilient and manage stress, to manage change. And it's really because I believed that I wrote a lot about it. Because I think after character, this came next because I think it's foundational to everything else. And I loved the subject, and I learned a lot about the subject. Like you say, whether it's from Goleman's classic book on emotional intelligence to others who've written on the subject who know far more about it than I began looking at things like self-awareness and self-control, attitude and optimism as foundational elements here. And I believe it. I wrote a lot about it because I truly believe in it. Again, ask me 25 years ago, it would have been a little different answer. I believe firmly in life, and absolutely in business, and especially if you are a leader, that this matters far more than your degree or your degree of traditional intelligence, as measured by Wonderlic. Forget about Wonderlic when you're an executive. It's about your ability to build relationships, influence, and using what you got. And traditionally, right, I was, I focused a lot on academics in school, took a lot of pride in traditional measures of intelligence. Learning about emotional intelligence over the course of my career turned that thinking on its head. And that's right. Really why I wrote a lot about it.
Yeah, well, first of all, I could tell, honestly, I could tell you were on a self journey. and I'll tell you how I could tell. Because you didn't just talk about self-awareness, right? You started breaking it down, internal self-awareness. Then it was internal self-awareness and core values. Then it was internal self-awareness and our aspirations and motivations, right? And then it goes the motivators that lie outside of you, the motivators that lie within you. Then then you went on to go the external self-awareness, mindfulness and self-awareness, ego's role in self-awareness, right? And you just kept going. I kept going, oh, I see what's going on here. because then all of a sudden you got to self-control and managing your own thoughts and emotions, which I want to get to next. But I started seeing your own journey in this, that you just couldn't leave it at self-awareness. You started breaking it down and tearing it apart. And you started going, oh my gosh, becoming self-aware, while it is the first step in emotional intelligence, while it's the first step getting there, it's much more complicated than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, in tearing that apart, it was like, yeah, I didn't always like what I saw, right? I tore that apart. I'm like, yeah, there have been portions of my life when, I could have been, and we've all been through that, right? We also talk about, part of what I talk about resilience is regret, right?
Yeah.
I can't, that ship has sailed now, but a lot of it was also in saying, these are so intertwined, when you look at what, if you're not internally self-aware of what drives you, what you like and don't like, what your values are, what your motivators are, right, well, you can't operate effectively inside or outside of work or at home if you're not aware of how those things mesh. And so I really did start dissecting that a lot. And a lot of that was, it really was a journey, this book, in a way that was far more fulfilling, right? The leadership stuff I know. I built a career on it. It's great. I love it. I'm passionate about it. But this was much more eye-opening for me. And in a way, it was much more personally fulfilling, because I think I lead, I haven't always, I'm leading my life differently than I did before I wrote the book, right? Not fundamentally differently, but differently enough where I'm a lot happier when I look in the mirror.
Well, I think one of the big takeaways from all the self-awareness pieces and how you teased it out is that we truly, do not know ourselves as well as we'd like to think we do. I think A. And then I think B, or two, I think we don't want to know ourselves as well as we need to, because I think we're actually kind of afraid of it, in a sense. And those two things really stood out to me, is that we don't know ourselves well, and I don't know that we want to know ourselves that well.
I think the second point you make is critical, right? Because the world's telling us that whoever we are probably isn't good enough, right? Don't like who you are. There's always plastic surgery. There's always, right, bariatric surgery. There's always something else. Create a new identity online. There's a million different ways which we compare ourselves and can find us wanting in some way. Or the world is telling us that they're telling us who we should be. They're providing our sense of self-identity, right? You really should be like this. And every single time you turn on the TV, get online, whatever it may be, you are bombarded with idealistic identities that make you feel like whoever you are isn't good enough. And so what do you say? Well, if I'm not good enough, why should I get to know myself? Because I don't want to be me anyways. I'm gonna work on being somebody else I don't know. And that's I think that's a really sad thing. And I think the message for a lot of people is, you're not perfect, but you need to get to know who you are. You'll find out you're probably a lot greater person than you think you are. So take the time first to get to know yourself before you figure out what you can improve on. There's always things, right? We always talk about continual improvement and doing better. You talked about, can I kick my backside of yesterday's version of me? Yeah. I mean, we're always on that journey, but there's a difference between that and saying fundamentally, I am inferior. I'm inferior as a human being. And I think those messages are, unfortunately, I kind of hit on it. I'm done with the third one. But one of the things I hit on is, there's an epidemic with suicide, particularly amongst males who are 50 years and older. Now, it's tragic at any age, at any race.
Right.
But at some point, you look in the mirror and there's an accounting for your life, and you come up wanting, and you feel like there's no other alternative.
Right. Well, we just saw that. We just saw this this past week at the CFO from Bed Bath & Beyond.
Right. He
52 years old.
chose to end it. And the question, and that is really a lot more common than people think. And it's tragic. It's tragic in any way, shape, or form. Right. You see young kids who are adolescents bullied and commit suicide. But I feel like, and I feel like we have such a because there's such a different world we live in now than 25 years ago, right? Because information is hitting us at every moment of the day. There's a million ways in which we can be told somehow that we could be better than we are. Now, continuous improvement is good, but there is a difference between that and what we, I think, get bombarded with. You hit upon the most crucial part of our conversation, which really is about this. Hey, I don't know myself, and I don't want to get to know myself, because who I am, I don't think is good enough. So I'll just change me.
And there's no plastic surgery for changing your heart and soul of who you are. You are what you are, and you are what you are for a purpose and a reason. To me, that's what this book says. Is regardless of what the world says you should be, you have a purpose, a meaning, an impact, and can be absolutely fulfilled just as you are.
That's a big piece of this message, is to say, there's a choice. You do have choices, right? Now, people will idealistically say you can be anything you want to be if you try hard enough. I appreciate the sentiment, but the reality is, no, I'm 6'8". I can't be a pilot, right?
Or a horse jockey.
I'm not a jockey, right? I'm not a jockey, and I'm never going to be I know you got the weightlifting stuff all over your garage, right? I'm never going to be a power lifter. But the fact is, I've got a lot of stuff I can be, and it depends on my outlook.
Yes.
And, there's a huge part of my locus of control, right? There's many more things. Henry Ford said, I think, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yes.
And there's a big piece of that sits within us. And this is about, you talked about purpose, meaning, and significance, finding out those things, and then go do that, right? If that's what you found you're passionate about and good at, then great. Those are great things. Don't try and be the guy down the road, right? I'm not going to go get a bunch of weightlifting equipment.
Right.
I love you to death, but I'm not going to go do it because I can't be you, right? I don't have the talent for what you do, and in many facets. So I'll be me.
Yes.
And I think that's the message I hope people will get out of this, is just try and be the best you can be. Just don't be somebody else.
Right, and because I think it's, I'm trying to remember where it's at, maybe in section 5 or 6. Is it success equals passion plus talent?
It's actually the next book, which is where talent and passion collide. That's where excellence is, right?
Right. Talent plus passion equals performance. That's what it is. That's the piece. Yes. Right.
Yeah,
and it's in managing outcomes, section 6.
Correct. Yeah. And only you can find those things. And I think that's a big piece. That's why I sort of, I clung on to that. And that's what I focused on in the next book, which is about, find out where your talents do lie. And that takes some time, discovery, experimentation, a practice. Obviously, you have to hone your talents. Right. And you have to find out what you're passionate about. And that means sorting out the passing interests from the enduring deep interests, right? The passions, where you get to apply both those things in work and in your life. You tend to find, right, whether you call it being in the zone or whatever, being in flow, that's what you love to do and you're good at, right?
Right.
If you're good, if you are awesome at, the work you do in your field is awesome. No doubt you're passionate about it. So you're great at it. And other people can be great at something too. They just need to discover those two elements, passion and talent.
Well, and here's the thing. And I want to remind people of this, because especially young people, and I've spoken to young people, college students, high school students, on this very subject. And I want to just tell you something. And even if you're older, you may not know what you're passionate about right now. You may have certain passions and talents that you see right now, but you don't even know what you could be passionate and talent. And let me say why I say that, Will, because this show that I do right now, well, I love doing what I do here. I love it. Love it. It did not exist 40 years ago when I was graduating college. It didn't exist. I have never taken a broadcasting class. And I love what I do, and I'm pretty good at it. And it's something that I didn't even know I wanted to do, or something that I knew that I was good at. It was something that developed over the course of time, because I had written a book and I'd been on other shows, and somebody gave an opportunity for me to do interviews. And the next thing he said is, "You got to do your own show, man." And I found that I love this. I love being with you. I love reading your book. I love interviewing about it. That's the thing, is that some people don't even know. But that's why you have to explore, I believe. I don't know. And I think that coincides with what you're saying.
Yeah, it is. And, I got into that subject really deeply, in the future, the future book, because I remember you kept telling me to keep writing books. So I did, apparently.
Yeah.
And, that apparently I'm easy to influence. So the thing about that, though, right, was I took your advice and I'm like, yeah, if I find, I like writing. I don't, I'm not going to get rich off it. But what I found, just as you said, is you have to experiment, right? I know I wouldn't know that I was not good at things if I didn't try.
Right.
Now, there are some things, right? You just have to accept, hey, it's not in my core wheelhouse. It's not in my talent. And I could develop it to a point that I'm mediocre. But okay, that's probably, I'm not going to hang my hat on that lifelong passion. Maybe it could develop into a hobby. But, you have to experiment and find out where your core strengths lie. And you develop them. Now, you will have much more interest in developing them where you can apply them for something you are passionate about.
Right.
And like you said, you never know. I wouldn't, I was petrified in speech class in high school, right? I looked like a shaking giraffe. I'm almost 6'9". But, I like it now. I'm fine in front of a crowd. I don't know, if they love me, but I think I'm okay at it. And I'm passionate about sharing certain subjects. So, like you said, we have no idea what the world will look like. We know remember the old adage of there's two things in life that are certain: death and taxes.
Right.
Well, the third is change. Right. And, you can guarantee whatever you're doing today, there will be a different way to do it next year. Let alone 5 years from now. You don't even know what media will exist, what jobs will exist, what you'll be doing, what you'll be passionate about. But if you don't get out there, it's like the lottery, right? If you can't win if you do not enter, and it's the same concept. Life is the same concept. You can't win in whatever you decide winning is, right? In your fulfillment, if you don't get out there, and it's about not just talents, but it's about finding where does your interest lie. And you're going to find some stuff you dabble in,
right?
And you find that they're hobbies. They end up being hobbies or passing interests, but some things stick to you over time.
Right.
And that's the stuff, like you say, you find out, hey, this whole broadcasting thing, I am pretty darn good at this. I like it. I impact people's lives. I'll do more of that stuff because all this seems to come together pretty well.
Right.
Everybody's got that in them. And many people spend their entire lives trying to find out what that is. That's okay. And I think people need to remember, especially again, it applies for everyone. But if you are 50 and you think it's too late,
right?
It's not.
It's not.
I think somebody said, when is the best time to plant a tree, right? 25 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today.
Right.
So plant the tree and move on, I think. And I think that's healthy in terms of looking at how to manage not just this idea of finding your talents and passion, but also in dealing with, regrets and past. But yeah, I love what you said about, the media didn't exist, right? I mean, we were all, hey, we thought 8-track tapes were cool. It's like, hey, I had one in my car, and we laugh now. I mean, people are saying, I laughed. My sister said, I've got this big TV, but it's got an integrated DVD player, so I don't throw it out. And of course I'm laughing saying, yeah, but I could just watch the movie on my iPhone, and you never know that what is cutting edge becomes a ridiculous, archaic, way of living in just a few years. So I love what you said about that. I already have droned on about it, but I think you've hit upon something really important. Is if you're college kids, you don't have to have it all figured out, by the way. There's so much pressure,
right?
When you're a junior in high school to declare a major and figure out what you're going to do with your life.
Right.
Go to college, declare a major, and don't worry what it is, because you're going to change it.
Right.
That's normal. And for anyone to tell you that you must cement in your life path when you're 18 or 20 or 22,
right,
it's a farce. We all know it's a farce now.
By the way, we've been on over an hour. It always happens to us.
That's because sometimes I show up late.
We actually, even after that, we've done over an hour. It's how it's just gone so fast. We'll tell people how did they get a hold of you, please.
Yeah. So you can, you can hit me on Facebook or on Instagram, willshermerofficial.com. Let's see where else. Twitter, I guess I'm on as well.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn, absolutely. On LinkedIn, happy to talk about anything people want to hear about, whether it's personal fulfillment or leadership. And I just hope, I guess my hope is that, even if a few people pick up the book and it sparks something in them, that's great, because it's like helping that person out in the airport for 5 minutes, right? It's all good stuff.
His name's Will Shermer. The book's called Fulfilled, available at bookstores everywhere. Folks, that's the show. You know what I say to you every week. You're in control of 3 things: your attitude, your effort, your excellence, and resilience. You know what? It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. You are in control of them. Take control, because you can. Be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great book. It's going to be another great show. As I say to you everywhere, every week, ciao, everybody.